Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Tech Show with Daryoush. My name is Daryoush. Our guests are Robert Blakely, my friend, also known as the Blakester, and Kurt Roskopf from the Disability Channel. Today I have two important news before beginning the show. The first one is that if you are using Google Chrome, update it as soon as possible. There are two zero-day vulnerabilities that hackers are exploiting these days, and the newest update fixes these issues. Another important news is that Microsoft has fixed 114 security flaws in Microsoft Exchange Server. 19 of these are rated as critical, 18 are rated as important, and only one is rated as moderate in severity. And these security flaws are widely used by exploited by the hackers. And if you run Microsoft Exchange Server, you need to apply these patches as soon as possible. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the ways that hackers hack websites. You might have seen or noticed that sometimes 500, 600, 700 websites get hacked. These are maybe all local, or some of them are in different countries. 5 in Germany, 2 in France, 1 in Canada, 200 in US, 50 in Mexico or Brazil or somewhere else. One of the most important things that majority of the programmers and web developers ignore is that they create a developer website, a test website, or calling it staging website, on the same account, on the same domain as a subdomain or as a subdirectory, somewhere on the same server. This is a serious problem. One live website and a under development website, which has bugs, problems, issues, coding errors, warnings, things that the programmers are working on them to fix them. They are all on the same server. And if a hacker can access to these websites, they can easily get access to the whole server, to the whole website or the domain. And depending on how you access to your server by FTP and how you have configured, they may gain access to the whole server. Usually, when you get a server, you create an FTP account for each domain. If you get a server management software like WHM or Place, you can create different control panel accounts, and each account belongs to a single domain or a primary domain, and this domain can hold all the live site, emails, everything. And it has a FTP account. You will have an FTP account, log in and upload the files there. But I have seen dedicated servers that has been configured by non-professionals. Root access without password with a certificate that when you connect to the, you don't download and install the certificate. You don't have to download and install the certificate on your FTP client before trying to connect to this FTP. While you try to connect, it automatically connects, it is installed, and gives you access. This is the worst security issue that I have seen on some websites. And such kind of websites can be hacked very easily. You get connect to the whole, you get access to the whole server, complete server, all the accounts, all the email addresses, all the files, all the scripts, everything, without any password. Another way is people get one shared hosting account. Usually in any shared hosting account, you can park multiple domains, point them to a subdirectory inside the public HTML or in the root of your account. And you have multiple accounts, multiple servers, multiple websites without any problem. But this is another, again, another security issue, because when one of these websites gets hacked, hacker can access the whole account. And if you are using a website, a server that you can connect to the server with FTP, with the username, without password or a poor password, hacker can get access to the whole server. And this is one of the ways that all of a sudden you see they easily hack hundreds of websites. With single script, they just replace the index file on all the domains, and your website goes, and the website goes down. Developers must have a separate server, a separate account, separate domain for the development and testings, and protect them with htaccess password, the root of the test website. If you want to give access to a client to see how it works, give them a username password to get access to it, but not a simple username password. I have seen, this is not something smart. This is a very simple thing. I've seen people using their domain name as uppercase, lowercase, and the year. And say, okay, our password has uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, digits, so it is secure. No, it is not secure. Hackers are smart. And if you think they are not, you are wrong. Be careful and think about how to protect your information, your data, and your clients. And again, tonight we're going to continue to listen to Robert Blakely, known as the Blakesters, talks about the sales psychology. And he is going to talk about how to the pain of the marketplace. I don't know what is that. I'm very interested to see what is the pain of the marketplace.
Right on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
How's it going, guys? Pleasure to be here yet another day with my brothers and sisters from other fathers and mothers. Yeah, today, so I want to talk to you today about what I consider like the content formula for pain, right? When we're talking about sales psychology, especially for myself, one of the things that I'd like to teach my students is understanding how to talk to the pain of the marketplace. And what I really mean by that, in essence, what it boils down to is that once your buyers feel comfortable with you and they're also confident in your ability to help them, they'll speak a lot more freely about what their needs are. And as they kind of get a little bit loose-lipped, if you will, they'll grow more candid about what the problems are that they actually have that you can help them solve. It's been said many times, and I teach this and preach this all the time, is that you have one mouth and two ears, right? So in the sales environment, it's important for you to use those 2 ears to actually listen to what's going on, right? And then you also want to use these questions when you're speaking to a prospect to actually pinpoint what their troubles are, right? So to give you an example, if I'm talking about the pain in the marketplace, I would talk to a prospect and I would ask them something like, is there anything about your current situation that you don't like? Now, when I ask that question, I need to zip my lips and shut my mouth and actually listen to what that customer is telling me, right? Because I'm asking them, what is the current situation that they don't like, right? I'm not asking them what they do like. So with me asking them what they don't like, that's actually a pain point, right? So you want to get to the discussion with the person about what the pain that they're going through, what is their struggle, right? Because in essence, if you can speak to the pain in the marketplace and you can solve their problem, you get rid of their pain, right? So another example is, if I ask that question, another example is, does that mean you're completely happy with your current situation? 9 out of 10 times, people will say they're happy with their current situation, but in reality, they're really not happy with their current situation. So another thing I could say is something like, well, in the industry, we've noticed patterns with, and name whatever the difficulty is that you have overcome for your customers. In Emily's example, for example, using Emily, the overcome helping people finding a job, right? You can ask questions like, have you experienced any problems in this area? And which of those concerns you more? Like, again, the main thing is to ask certain types of questions that speak to the pain in the marketplace so that you can dig deep psychologically within that person to pull out what those pains are to, in essence, find out if you can solve them, right? Another idea of those questions would be like, if you could change one thing about what your current situation is right now, what would that be, right? There's another great question. And once they start talking again, you have to listen. And once you listen, you can ask more questions and listen more intently. And in essence, what I call this is, it's called level one listening, right? So you have to level one listen intently to what the customer is telling you, especially after you ask them a question. So when you ask them that, they answer, you can even say, can you be more specific about that, right? Can you give me more details about that? Well, tell me more about that. That is the 5 words that will make you more money in this industry is, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Okay. Another example of some of these questions is, what recent example of that comes to mind? How long has that been a problem? When you identify a problem with somebody, ask them, how long has that been a problem? Because first off, if you identify the problem, you're hitting the pain. Now you're saying, how long has that been a problem? You're digging deeper into that pain, right? Another question you can say is, what have you tried in the past to fix the problem? Again, it just compounds the deepness of that pain. Well, what have you tried in the past? Now they're having to role play about all the different things that they've tried. Well, what's worked for you and what hasn't? Now, more in depth, right? Now it's thinking more about this pain and the struggle that this person has had to go through. Okay. Another good question is, why do you think you got the results that you did? If they did get results, right? Again, it's all about asking the right questions, getting good at asking questions, especially when it comes to the pain points in the marketplace, right? And then ultimately, a great question when you're diving into these things is, how much do you figure that that's cost you? So having the problem that you have right now, what do you think that that's actually cost you in a dollar terms, right? Again, this is psychological because you want them to think about that pain that they're going through, because at the end of all this, if you're able to solve that pain, you're like literally, you're like a magician, if you will, right? So another couple of questions that you can ask is, what is the most recent action you've taken to correct it, right? So if you identify the problem, ask them, well, what have they done already, right? Because it's going to be kind of silly if you try to recommend them to do something that they've already tried before, right? Unless you have another angle or another take on it. Another great question, speaking of magicians, you could ask a person, well, if you could wave a magic wand in the situation that you're in, what would it do? Now, this on a psychological level, you're getting them to think, okay, well, if I actually had this magic wand and went poof, what would it do for me? Like, what would it solve? Again, you're digging deep into the pain to find out what their actual problems are and whether or not you can solve them, right? After you ask that question, you can ask them a question like, how is this affecting you? I mean, in essence, in my world, if you're not getting enough sales, well, then maybe you're not having enough money to pay your bills. Maybe that's struggling on the relationship. Now you and the wife are fighting. Next thing you know, you're getting a divorce, all because of something silly that could have been changed, right? Another great question to ask people is, how much are you willing to invest to solve the problem, right? And what that does on a psychological level is I'm pre-qualifying them to find out whether or not they can even pay me for my services, right? So a lot of times I say this, and this is known to be true, that most people when they come online and they go into network marketing, they have zero advertising budget. They have zero budget. They just don't set aside that money. Although in a traditional business, brick and mortar, people have to set aside that money. They have to have that budget for their advertising and anything else that they're doing. But people that come online don't do that. It's weird to me, but they don't do it, right? So you need to find out, do they even have some type of budget that you can help them with and be paid for the services that you're going to render, right? Another great question is, how do you see me helping you, right? This is a great psychological question because now you're pulling out what is their level of expectation for you. So if I say, how do you see me helping you? And I have all these different things coming back at me, and I need to, of course, be aware of that level of expectation that that person is providing to me, and then be able to meet that level expectation and or exceed that level expectation, right? So what I've done right there through asking all of those pain points, right? I've I've dug into the pain. I found out what the problem was, found out whether or not I can solve it. I pre-qualified the person to find out if they have a budget to pay me for what I'm going to do. I've also found out what their expectations were. Now I could dive in. And for example, for myself, I could say something like, well, what if I was to tell you that I could help solve blank, blank, blank problem that that customer just told me, and it was only going to be 497 to get started. Would you be ready to get started right away? So I'm able to do that because I already pre-qualified the person, found out whether or not they had a budget. If that person said, well, yeah, I've got a budget of 1,500, then I know my cost of 497 is only a third of what his budget is, right? He's going to be pretty happy that he's not spending his whole $1,500 budget, right? So the key is, right, is that you had to meet that level of expectation though, with the value versus the amount of money that they're actually going to have to pay. So, what do you think that they're going to do if they've got a budget of 1,500 and you're coming way below their budget to solve a problem? Odds are they're going to hire you, right? And that in turn turns everything around to where if you're speaking to the pain in the marketplace and you're solving that customer's problem, guess what do you think's going to happen, guys? What do you think's going to happen? We talk about things. It's in our nature. We talk about things. That person may go to another person that's having a similar problem and say, hey, this person took care of my problem. You might want to check them out. Right now, you've got people that are talking about you. You have the best form of advertising, which is word of mouth. Now you've got some of your clients referring other people to you. Now you are the hunted and not the hunter. So it'd be in your best interest to learn some of these things, learn some of these questions, and start doing your best to speak to the pain in the marketplace. And that's all I got for today.
Thank you, Robert. What do you think about the pain of the market, Kurt?
Well, I think I can kind of bounce a little this back to you, Daryoush, because from where you sit, you give an interesting perspective for Blakester's message, because there's an aspect of risk and fear. So the idea of security, like you're talking about Asgard security. So that's an interesting conversation to have, right, Blakester? Because, a little of what you talked about, somebody might jump to a problem right in front of them and what's happening now. So, but some of the pain we're talking about is potential of future pain. So I guess I'd like to hear you two have a little exchange back and forth and address that part of it, that if the pain isn't now, but it's like insurance, the protection aspects to make sure that you don't get pain in the future. What do you guys think about that?
Here's something to kind of dive in, and it doesn't have to go back and forth with Daryoush and I, but something to add to, if you will, is if you go and you realistically, you have to think like I think psychologically, right? And if you can go deep inside their brain, the deeper you can go, the better, right? You can go down that rabbit hole, right? Let's say you're promoting a specific product. Let's say it's security. In your case, Daryoush, you could ask questions or say things like, well, what would happen if you don't have security? Well, I might get hacked. Well, what would happen if you got hacked? Well, I don't know. I'd probably lose all my information, all my data. Well, what would happen then? Right. And you keep asking this question. Well, what then? And then, and then, and then, and then, and then, and then. And you're doing the same type of thing when you're talking about the pain point. You're just asking them to fulfill that pain point. You know what I mean by that? So, and you ask them, and in essence, you ought to get them down to the finite thing. Well, if you don't do this, what's going to happen? Well, we're all going to die. Right. So I need your services. But there's a way of doing that, is what I'm saying. And if you can speak on a psychological level and speak to that pain, and then especially like I'm mentioning with Daryoush, well, what would happen if that doesn't? If you don't get that, go from that angle, and you'll see a difference in people in the way that they respond to you. And then if you take them down that path, and then ultimately you're the hero at the end of the day because you've got the solution, it's not hard to get that sale when you're doing it that way. So definitely speak to the pain point, ask them questions, man. What happens if you don't get this?
Thank
And
you, Robert.
exhaust to the worst measure that you could possibly think of, or that they can think of, shall I say.
Yes, you're right. To answer these questions, I already did to many small businesses that I contacted, and their answers were shocking for me. I saw people that I contacted them, asked them the same question, and what do you think their response was? I don't have any important information.
Right.
Okay. What do you do if your website is hacked and they steal your data? I don't have anything information important, and if something happens, I just re-upload everything. And okay, how do you know that your backup files are clean without the virus, without the malware? I check it with the antivirus program. Okay, what antivirus? I have something, and at the end, this is a free version of something that cannot identify 99.99% of the viruses and malwares. And when I tell them, hey, okay, you do this, you scan with an antivirus, but do you know that these antiviruses has been prepared for Windows viruses and malwares, not for server malwares, not for server viruses. These are the scripts that have been created to be executed on the server, not on a Windows computer. They say, no, forget, never mind. If something happens, I will upload it again. This is the answer.
Do you
And
ever talk to them
I-
about, do you ever talk to them or ask them about the time that it's going to take them to recover?
They don't care.
Well, I know that because of our conversation, especially here in the United States, but that's
Some of
another
them do
thing.
not care,
Yeah.
and I believe I had some of them ran out of the business after some time, because in one case there was a Swiss guy living in Malaysia. He refused to. I had the same conversation with him, and he refused to use the service. No, I don't need it. I don't have anything important on my website. And about 3 or 4 months later, I heard from our common friend that hackers hacked his website, stole all the list of his contacts and clients, and sold it to his competitor. And they sent all the contacts an email that from now on, please come to this website, and we are at your service. I'm changing the domain information. That simple, they stole his clients. And because of the laws, he couldn't do anything, and he ran out of the business. He changed his business because he ignored the security, he ignored everything. Hackers are not in your country. They are in another country. They sell to your competitor in another country. And what are you going to do? Is the law in your country, even if the laws in your country protect you, does it cover another country? Does the countries have this, all the countries have the same law, the same protection? No. And those who do this, they target countries that they cannot, law protects hackers by not covering cybersecurity. So there isn't any law for that, and you cannot sue anyone.
Well, look, we've had our conversations and I agree with you. And I believe that really what it comes down to, Daryoush, is education. I mean, that's just like anything else. People have to know and understand and be educated enough to say, okay, well, I do run this risk. I myself, I know I've told this story, and you know the story because you helped
Yeah.
me get rid of the viruses that I had back in the past. And literally for myself, my entire everything down, and it was jacked. I don't even remember how long it took to get everything back. It was a couple of days, but even for those couple of days, like I was in a fog, I was in a stupor, like panicking and stuff like that. So I'm just grateful that I have you as a really good friend for all these years and that you're there to help me out. So I think it's just more education, right? So hopefully the people that are watching these videos are gaining and gleaning that information, and hopefully they go to the man Daryoush there for their security needs.
Okay, it seems we are running out of time. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our talks. Have a good weekend. And stay safe. Bye.
You love you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.